Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors, wherever you are in the world. I do hope you're having a good day. Welcome to the Day In, Day Out podcast. This is episode 67, where I had the immense pleasure to have CJ Walley on our podcast today. He is a screenwriter, film producer. He is also the founder of Script Revolutions. Yeah. Basically, I'd have to say he was a very interesting chap to speak to. Gave me a lot of insight into what, basically, the sort of ins and outs of the whole sort of movie industry. I have to say, very interesting conversation. I look forward to having conversations with him in the future. But please sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the podcast. Thank you very much for your time, and please subscribe. Peace. Oh. Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors. Wherever you are in the world, I do hope you're having a good day. Welcome to the Day In, Day Out podcast. This is episode 67. Yes, today I am very lucky to have and privileged to have CJ Walley. Like, he is a screenwriter, producer. He is also the founder of Script Revolution as well. How are you today, sir? How are things in your world?
I'm great, mate. Well, thanks for having me on. It's a sunny day in Stoke-on-Trent.
Yes. Like, well, that is, I've got to say, is there many sunny days in Stoke-on-Trent?
It's always a sunny day in Stoke-on-Trent. That's how we like to think up here. We have to.
Yeah, the reason why I say this, like my lady, she's from Manchester. So like the whole thing is when she goes, oh, it's nice and sunny. I go, mm-hmm. The amount of times I've went up when she was living up in Manchester, now she's in London. The amount of sort of sunny days I had, let's say they were few and far between.
Oh, it's a beautiful city. I love Manchester. It's fantastic. But yeah, I know what you mean. It all changes when you get up here. It really does.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah, like before we start, like you are like I've got a little bit of envy, I would say. You don't live too far away from Alton Towers. How many times have you been to Alton Towers?
An excessive number of times, and it's quite normal for people here to work there. And I used to actually maintain and run their websites when I first started freelancing. So, yeah, I mean, we come a little bit blasé to it here, but yeah, we're pretty proud of that place. We're pretty proud to be nearby.
I see, I see. To anyone who is outside of the UK, Alton Towers is a large theme park. I would say the largest theme park in the UK. Let's just say if you're coming from London, it takes forever and a day to get there. But when you're here, it's well worth it. Like I've done many a 4 o'clock pilgrimage to get there for the opening time.
I'm glad
Yeah.
it was worth it.
Oh, absolutely. No, no, highly recommend. Yeah, I've got to say, with yourself, you have had a very, very busy 7 years. You've been kind of on it. It's like, from what I can see, like looking through my notes here, you've done 10 shorts, 4 features, 1 music video. And yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to be frank, it's been the best part of a decade. It's been quite a lonely majority to that decade. It's only in the last few years that things have really picked up. The nature of being a writer is you're quite distant. But yeah, I've just been just at it, and at it, just trying to build things up. And now things are really starting to kick off for me, which is great.
Mm. So, like, basically, with the start of your, like, was it a case of back in 2013, you went, okay, I'm going to just start writing and putting myself out there? Like, how did that sort of kick off?
Well, it was earlier than that. It was 2012,
Uh-huh.
and I had effectively like a midlife crisis. I had like this. I was working for myself. I had a freelance business that was doing very well,
Mm.
and that started to kind of fall apart. And I was kind of not fitting in with that, and I had this kind of big event in my life where, you know, it hit me really hard, you know, like I think it does for a lot of people. I wasn't really being a creative, wasn't really expressing myself. I was doing freelance web design, print design, but that's kind of like engineering. You don't get to be really creative. So I had this kind of major life event where I was looking at myself and thinking, this isn't where I want to be. This isn't making me happy. My head is full of these ideas, these movie ideas, these scenes. They keep me up at night.
Hmm.
I really need to start applying myself into this area. I need to lean into this because otherwise it's going to drive me crazy. And the work I'm getting is not making me happy. So yeah, to a large extent, it's that really strange thing, especially later in life, if you suddenly decide I'm going to be an artist, and it feels really, really, really odd because you have that issue of, well, what right do I to have that? Where is the history? It's been 20
Mm,
years of not doing it. So it was that kind of event that triggered it.
excellent. So, like, with regards to what was your sort of first short, I would say, because like from what I can see, it was a short film. What took?
Yeah, so when you're trying to break in, and it is really tough to break in to an industry which has got massive supply compared to demand, it's got massive oversupply. And if you want to get into the feature side, that's crazy. That's all centralized pretty much in Hollywood, with little bits around the world, and it's a tricky group to break into. So a lot of writers, we will start writing short scripts, you know, less than 10 pages, in the hope that maybe an aspiring filmmaker or student makes that. And I got really lucky early on. I listed one of the first short scripts I wrote, which was about a struggling actress. She was facing issues of the difficulties of fame and things like that. And this was kind of before the kind of more of the female empowerment movement went into acting and those areas. And a female student at London, in London, called Sandra Mitrovic, she picked it up. So I got a short script made unusually early on, and that spoilt me a little bit. She did a great job.
Mhm. Okay, and like this is the thing. Like I've had a couple of friends who've done short films where they've made them,
Mm.
and like it's a case of like with the writing side of things, do you have to sort of get involved in sort of like finding like raising the finance to get the film done, or is it you're to like once you've written it, excuse me, you're totally removed from it then?
I think so. It really comes down to what the writer wants to do in terms of what involvement they want to have, and that's quite tricky, because a lot of writers just want to write, get the script out there, and walk away. But then the writers themselves, you know, a lot of us, we care about how it gets made and how it looks, and we can be quite precious about it as well. So we want control. Well, you can't really have control or artistic control of a project unless you have overall control of a project in some way. So it varies for a lot of writers. Some writers are happy to stick with the idea of, I write a script, I give it to you, you pay for it,
Mm,
whatever you do with it, it's fine. I've washed my hands of it. I'm going to go away. I'm going to spend my money, and hopefully it will come out like I imagine. Whereas other writers more like myself, we want to get involved in the production side. We want to get involved in raising finance, seeking attachments, scheduling, and everything else in between. Partly because we get some kind of creative control, partly because it increases the chances of something getting made. But also, I mean, personally, I find it's like so much more fulfilling to get really kind of up to your elbows in the actual filmmaking world itself. And that's why I more recently moved into a writer producer role.
right. And with moving into a producer role, what are sort of the differences with that? Because when you say producer, I imagine that is definitely more involved.
Yeah, I mean, I never thought I would have producer next to my name in any credits.
Mm.
And now I've got it next to a bunch of films which are effectively, you know, in some early stage. and we're held up right now because of the COVID situation. But I had an actual film. I was going to go over to LA in July, and we were going to make that. And I'm a co-producer on that project as well as a few others. So we had a green light, and that was really strange because I never thought I could go there. Like, I always thought that was an ambition that was too far. There was too much to learn. You had to be in, to a degree, as kind of an elite club, or you had to be that kind of alpha personality which goes out and says, I'm going to be a producer. No one can stop me. And I'm not that kind of guy.
Mm.
But it came about because I was just so involved in so many different areas with previous projects. So I learned all these things just by going out and doing them and being in the room and having to deal with them. And as a result of that, if you have any kind of genuine ability to go out and get something done, then people will latch onto that. People will be like, right, okay, we need someone who can actually make things happen, who understands how these things work.
No, I see. So with that, like, I imagine like, before you got into the realm of producing, there was a sort of a little bit of a learning process going on with that. So was it just a case of like, okay, you wrote one and you went, okay, that's fine. You wrote another and you went, okay, that's fine. What was that like, the burning, and was it just a burning ambition, or was it just something a little bit more detailed?
Yeah, it's really interesting because most people who have ever met me in my life see me as someone who's very laid back, always got quite a laid back attitude.
Yeah.
And I kind of sailed my way through the first 20 years. I was had my own office when I was 21. I was director of a marketing agency at 23. Self-employed 2 times in different ways, getting Vegas, Singapore, all these different things. And I was really chill with all of that. And then writing comes along, and it's just crazy. It takes over me completely. Like, absolutely, it's all I care about. It's all I want to do. And when I first kind of discovered writing, it was like I didn't care what I lost. I didn't care if I was going to lose my house, my relationship, my connections with friends, my money, anything. I just didn't care about losing anything because all I cared about was writing. That was really, really strange experience to go through. And you kind of need that because it's a real walk in the desert. I tell people, give yourself at least a decade to get anywhere with this kind of thing, because that's how long it's likely going to take, at least before anyone even notices you exist. That's how tough it is. So, with writing, it comes out of you. You don't really choose it; it chooses you, and you can't walk away from it. And I did try 2 or 3 times. I just could not take it anymore. You're not earning any money. You're flogging yourself. You're emotionally draining yourself, and nothing's coming back in return. There's no feedback loop. And it drives you to the point where you're like, I can't do this to myself anymore. I can't take the negative feedback. I can't take the negative news and stories. I can't carry on watching this slip by. And that's what just keeps you going, is this inner drive and this inner passion of just caring about the art form so much.
So basically, you would say it's akin to a calling, a never-ending calling, but when you're actually on that actual project as well. I wouldn't say like an obsessional drive. Maybe that's maybe a little bit too strong, but maybe it's kind of like a pilgrimage. Like, you start, and by the time you get to the actual destination, that is your pilgrimage complete for that particular project, if you get what I mean.
Yeah, if it's writing or if it's actually getting a movie made, that it's a tough journey. It's intense. I can't really think of anything like it. And writing can be like that if you really care about the story and getting as much emotion out of it as possible and turning it around in an efficient time, and then actually getting a movie made. That's just like, that is unbelievable. But you come out of it with this sense of unity and team building. Like, you're exhausted. You've done 18-hour days for 5 or 6 weeks, and everything that can go wrong has gone wrong. And you've traveled around, and all your clothes, they've got sand in them from being in the desert, and
Yeah.
salt in them from being near the sea and everything else. And all you can think of is, I want to start again right away. We've wrapped up, but no, I want to go back. I want to carry on. so it's very addictive in that side. But in terms of the art form, you're always a student, and that journey is never complete. That's how I like to look at it anyway. So you do have this goal, but the goal is almost abstract. There's no finish line.
Yeah, no, I think that's when any goal where there is no finish line, where you're sort of constantly having to push yourself, constantly growing. I think that's sometimes the best ones to have, because there's so many famous people you see who, like, they achieve something, especially in the sporting world. It's like, I have achieved being the world champion at this, and then everything sort of falls apart for them pretty much after that, because uh, kind of like Genghis Khan, they've got, like, they weep because they've got no more worlds to conquer. So it's like, what do I do now? And finding a sort of new direction is somewhat difficult. But if with writing, if it's a case of, yeah, you feel the next story like lighting your fire to keep going, hey, that is a fortunate thing for anyone to have, I would say. It must be a great feeling on a day to day.
It is. I think, a storyteller's life is one of constantly looking for truths about life. It's looking for life-affirming truths that are universal. And the more you discover those, and the more you explore the world, and you explore the human psyche and the way we are of each other and everything else, and our position in the universe, on every level, the more you have to say, the more you want to communicate to people, these kind of philosophic discoveries that you make personally, or you see, or you experience, or you learn about. You want to be able to communicate that in a very entertaining fashion. And that's always a constant drive. But I think, what you were saying there, Miwa, about, people, and they have these goals and they become the world champion. Something I've come to learn recently from some of the reading I've been doing is having one goal is dangerous. Setting a goal and saying, that's where I want to be, that's the top of the mountain. That's a really dangerous thing to do, because firstly, you set that goal without really knowing anything about the goal itself, other than that you have this kind of fictional kind of worshipping and fawning over it. And as we know, the way we move towards things, it's never a straight line. You don't go from here to here. You go this way, and then you go, oh, it's over here now. Oh, no, it's over here. And you zigzag. And that zigzagging becomes less and less and less until you identify where the destination is.
Yeah.
And part of discovering that destination is going down other roads and other paths. And that's really important to remain open to that, And I say that as someone who, as I said, 2 minutes ago, I didn't ever expect to be a producer. Now I'm producing. That's a whole new adventure in my life, and one that I'm really rewarded by.
Oh, excellent. So, like, producer now, like, big honcho on the film set. Do you think you might be looking at the realm of directing, maybe sometime down the line?
Well, I mean, I co-produce. So the thing about producing that's quite interesting is there's these kind of tiers to it. And it's a bizarre role as well, because if you went and said, if you asked the average person on the street, what does a film producer do? That
Yeah.
person would say, well, other than kind of walking around bossing people around, I have no idea what a film producer would do. And if you went to film producers and you said, what do film producers do? They'd also say, well, that's a really difficult question to answer, because a lot of them just walk around set bossing people around. And it's that strange thing, because it can encompass a whole range of different kind of tasks and roles and specialities, and there's all these different kinds of producers. And there's hierarchies. So you have a lead producer, you have executive producer, you have co-producer, you have assistant producers, and they all do different things. So my role at the moment is I'm a co-producer, which means what I do is I effectively bring my skill sets to the lead producer, who is kind of the head honcho, in most circumstances, and sometimes also the director in a lot of circumstances. When you see what a lead producer and or director has to do on a day-to-day basis, it is terrifying. It is like like this is all difficult enough, but what this person is doing,
Yeah.
it's like you watch them just cripple themselves. You watch them exhaust themselves. You watch them have to deal with 50 different issues per hour, and they have to make this incredibly emotional moment happen time and time again, so you can get every different shot, take, cut you can possibly, bit of coverage that you can get to get this film made. Because at the end of the day, you're making a product, someone's invested in it, you've got to get it made, you've got to get it sold, you've got to make their money back.
My God, it sounds like a day in the life of a producer is nightmarish and long. And if you're an actor, you're getting away with maybe the easiest part of it all. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the interesting thing about being on a film set is how hard it is for everybody, but in different ways. The famous saying about being on a film set, because so many people want to be on one and then they get there and it's terribly boring, is it's all about, they say hurry up and wait, because that's what it's like. You like a bunch of people like your grips and your cinematographers and your set designers or your prop masters and people like that, they rush in and they have to do all this work, and your script supervisors running around, your production assistants running around, and they have to get that all ready. And then you're kind of preparing the acting talent and the makeup artists and the costume are all doing that to one side. And it's all this kind of, oh, it's going to start, it's going to happen. And then, whoom, you're off. And then, the director's, yelling action and takes are being made and everything just has to suddenly happen. So it's really exciting for everybody, and it's tough for the actors. It's tough. It's a different style of working day. They have to do a lot of getting in a particular mindset,
Mm-hmm.
of preparing themselves to what's going to happen. They have to be ready for sudden, unexpected changes, potentially, particularly on like smaller productions. And they have to be able to pour themselves into a moment. So what they're doing is they're becoming incredibly drained, and it's a hopefully it's a very fulfilling kind of draining experience where they just pour themselves emotionally into a scene. They make a lot of creative discovery in that process. They're collaborating, having to repeat things over and over, because actors, there's a lot more going on than people realize.
Yeah.
In front of the camera, just the same, there's a lot more going on behind it. Actors have to hit marks, they have to look in certain directions, they have to try and maintain a sense of continuity by repeating a performance over and over without creating any kind of jarring differences between cuts. Sometimes they have to act to effectively a brick wall, because the nature of shooting them means you can't have someone for them to react to. So they have it tough in a different way. But the director, I mean, there's a reason why directors are kind of fawned over and worshipped on set, and it's because of the task that they have at hand.
I'm liking it. I'm liking it a lot. Like, this is the thing with all the work what goes behind like production. I've been lucky enough to be on a TV set a couple of times, a game show in one time, and then like there was this. It was a football tournament where you had celebrities on there, and the sort of like you're clapping, and it stops, and you sit there, and you wait. So I feel the pain of like, yeah, the quick then wait. Uh, and I've only done that just as an audience member, say. I can only imagine what that must be like if you're having to do a film shoot. If it's a short, I think that might be slightly easier. When it's a feature film, oh my Lord. Like, I think I, I have no idea how much film you've got to do for a short, but I would imagine it's about 3 or 4 times the amount when it finally gets edited down, maybe much more. But when it comes to a feature film, my God, that must be quite
Yeah.
nightmarish.
Yeah, so when you shoot a feature film, you're looking at, I mean, some of them have got it down to, a couple or even 3 weeks now for the really fast turnaround that you see with, I mean, if you take TV films, for example, they're shot sometimes in 2 weeks,
Wow.
which is, yeah, it's incredibly fast. And it's a very different kind of relationship. They kind of churn them out, and it's one of the reasons why you might watch a TV movie and you might have this kind of aura about it, which is a little bit different. Like it just feels a little bit different. Like maybe they don't cut back and forth very often between different camera angles, or maybe they have a lot of actors in shot at the same time, and they're all tricks that are used to reduce shooting time. But generally speaking, a feature film, you're looking at something like 5 or 6 weeks. You're usually shooting, around, 6 days in a week with a day off. And sometimes you're switching between day shooting and night shooting, which can be interesting.
Mm.
But you're only capturing often a few minutes of footage that's going to make it on screen, and of course you're spending an entire day. I mean, in our case, with a film like Break Even,
Yeah.
which is an indie film, which is a modest budget
Uh,
indie film.
rescued $50 million. Yeah.
Yeah, we rescued $50 million. Yeah, in that case, because of the nature of that, we were shooting quite a few scenes in a day, an unusually large amount. We run and gun to
Mm.
keep production costs down as much as possible. You have to with a film like that. I mean, we're a little bit unusual. We are unusually efficient compared to most. But you do get this kind of run and gun nature. If you're on a major blockbuster, you can be doing entire days shooting for, I don't know, a couple of minutes, a minute of footage, or maybe an action sequence, part of an action sequence which is a few seconds long.
Yeah, and like this, like for you think a whole day for just a few seconds or a
Mm.
couple of minutes, and you'd like go right. And when you're a writer, I imagine you just see it like, okay, I've wrote this scene. This is how, like, there you go. Then it's down to the director to get it out there and the actors to make it happen. When you're in the realm of, like, when you're in the mix with as a producer, I imagine you start to like, do you see it slightly differently because of the sort of added cost, maybe, or something like that?
Oh, don't you just? I mean, it's amazing. It's like, I don't know. It's like if you maintain your own car, you're going to really care about the way other people drive. Or if you do building work, you're going to really care about how people maintain their houses. Like you have this level of insight,
Mm.
which is incredibly valuable. It's one of the reasons why working writers can be held in great esteem and become very valuable, particularly writers that produce, because they know the limitations, they know the problems you're going to run into with things. And it can be really, really strange, the issues you do run into, because sometimes things that you think are going to be really cheap and easy aren't, and sometimes things that you think are going to be really expensive aren't. For instance, in the experience of making Break Even, we had a huge cast on that. In as it felt to me, we have had a lot of day players, people that came in for 1 or 2 days to shoot, and I thought that would be problematic, but it's not. If you do it right, it's not, and it can bring a lot of value. One of the toughest areas is stunts, and knowing what you can do there, and that was a strange experience for me, because again, like I've got a scene in the movie which involves a boat stunt, and speaking to the director when I was writing it, he was saying, "Well, I don't think we can really do this. It's not going to be realistic." And I said, "Oh, don't worry. We'd shoot it in a particular way where we'd cut away from the stunt, and then we'd cut back to show the kind of result of the stunt, and there'd be a sound effect, and that's how we'd get away with it." And well, we got the stunt driver down on the
Yeah.
day, and he did it for real. And so I ended up with a stunt that I didn't think we could do. And I don't think it's ever been done in a film, actually. It's quite a cool stunt. I won't spoil what the stunt is, but it's quite neat. And we also had a car chase,
Mm.
and I really kind of toned the car chase down in the writing, knowing that we're probably going to have a couple of vehicles, maybe rentals, maybe bought. We'd race them around in the desert. There's not a lot we can do with that. There's safety considerations and various other things, maintenance for one. Well, lo and behold, we get some of the stunt people down, and we talk about this stunt chase, and the stunt coordinator says, well, a friend of mine's got this great ramp that he has. It's a really special kick ramp that's great for launching vehicles off. And you guys, you've got this Ford Raptor pickup truck, which is this really kind of jacked up, kind of testosterone injected Ford F-150 with amazing amounts of suspension travel. So this, the stunt drivers come down, and the driver was Chuck Norris's youngest, Eric Norris,
Oh,
was the driver. And there was a Raptor there, and he launched this Raptor, jumped it twice, and we got some great footage with that. And I was not expecting we were going to jump in cars in the desert. So I'm like this kid who grew up with Knight Rider and the A-Team and all this stuff, and I'm like, we jumped a car.
it's like, go on, Kit, go on.
Yeah, it was.
You're like, yeah, I'm loving it.
Just like that.
Oh yeah, no, put it this way, if it was the A-Team, it would be the classic barrel roll, which would happen every week. It's just like, oh yeah, barrel roll. Like,
I know exactly what you mean. They threw those cars so far and so high, and that was a big thing. If you take something like the A-Team, for example, back in the 80s, and there was some other films that were TV series that were doing this. They were doing film quality stunts on a weekly basis during those TV shows. The Fall Guy as well, Skarsky and Hutch. And that was a big deal because what they were doing is they'd have an A unit, the first unit would go out and they would shoot all the stuff with the actors, and they would have what's called a second unit, and that would be a separate camera crew. That would be a whole second unit of director and everything else, and they would go out with the stunt team and they would shoot those brilliant stunt sequences and write off a lot of vans and Jeeps and things like that, and they've got it refined down. They got the whole air cannon or ramp refined down, so every week those guys would roll a car and that would get spliced in.
And you know what, every week you knew they would cut back to the car and you see like a couple of guys just to show
exactly.
Okay.
It's so true. It's so true. Was it firing guns everywhere, AK-47s? No one took a bullet.
Well, there was one episode where like Hannibal took a bullet, like he took one bullet once, but apart from that, it was like you're elite fighting force, but every time you're shooting off the ground, someone runs away. It's like
it's amazing.
And then locked in some type of like garage or shed where you like create a massive machine which takes everyone out with a watermelon or something like that.
Oh yeah, it was a great combo, wasn't it? It was strategy, it was brains, it was ingenuity, it was thinking on your feet, and it was taking on the bad guys, but never taking a life in the process, and there's some good values behind it.
Absolutely, yes. And Knight Rider, yes. Michael will forever be king.
I was chatting to a guy, his partner, she was working on set as a production assistant, and he directs some of the episodes of the US Office and the Mindy Project. Great guy, nice guy, and he's got a Night Industries 2000 replica, a really nice one. And I was talking to him last night actually, and he said, next time you come over, you'll have to go for a ride. And I'm like, I'm in. I'm developing a vaccine if it means I get to ride in kit.
You're just like, look, it's the highest levels of contagion in the whole country. Look, I'll make it happen.
I'm swimming across.
Loving it. So with Break Even, that is your current project at this moment in time. Is like you mentioned that Corona's put things on slightly on hold. Is it a case of you're trying to find a home for it to be distributed or something right now? Or
that's the process. So we wrapped just before May last year. It went into post production. That was quite an intense thing, and I think that brought us through to about March this year, where it was all done, signed off, edited, quality control. That's a tough area these days, and we had a plan. We had a good plan, and Corona derailed us somewhat. You've got an issue of people aren't in their office, people aren't at their desk, people can't get documents signed, people are losing their jobs. Entire departments are just frozen. You've got acquisition departments who are saying, we are not doing any acquisitions right now. We've had some big players sniff around at the film because it punches so much above its weight. I'm hoping to have a release date I'll be able to announce, sometime in the near future on that. I'm glad to say that I think the landscape is changing. People are coming up with new plans. We've got an issue with, theatrical. What is going on with theatrical? The new Top Gun movie, Maverick. They don't know how to release this film. Everyone's having issues. So it's all about finding the ideal place to be. I mean, for example, physical's really good now. Actual DVD sales are up. Streaming is going crazy for some of the smaller streamers. They're seeing massive growth.
Yeah, I would imagine stream would be something like, maybe it might not have been your plan originally, and I don't know what you might have in the works, but with regards to how all of the streaming companies right now are hungry for content, that if you went with like Apple, Amazon, and the big boy of Netflix itself, like there are some companies like, right now, content, and people are very hungry for it. Well, these companies are hungry for content. So I don't,
distribution is a very, very interesting area, and it's this area that a lot of people ignore. They want to go out, make a film, and they're excited about that, want to make the best film possible, get the best camera gear, get the best actors, get the best script ready, and they want to grade it beautifully, shoot in 5K, get a beautiful product out there. And they will raise the money because they have to raise the money to get the film made. So they'll do that. And chances are they'll get a new investor, someone who's probably been told, do not invest in film, clubs or restaurants, the 3 worst places you can go with your new money. And they've gone, no, this is sexy. I want to go around the clubs in Hollywood and I want to go to the fancy parties in the hills, So they invest. And the filmmakers don't have an exit strategy. They don't have a plan to get this out on the market in a way that it's going to actually return, profit for the investors.
Yeah, okay.
So a lot of people have this kind of dreamy idea, and they're going to go, you know what, if we make a good enough film and we make a fuss about it, people will see it, it will get noticed, it will be this kind of, a lot of the terms they'll use, indie darling or festival darling, and everyone thinks they're going to be the indie darling or the festival darling. It's their film that people are going to go, hey, check this out.
It was #1 in Sundance.
Well, this is it, and that's so tough to get something like that. And so what you end up with, sadly, is you end up with productions where they do a red carpet event at their own cost, and everyone dresses up and they tweet about it and they Instagram about it and whatever, and no one pays any attention. And then the actual producers themselves kind of go around town and quite, chippy at first, and they're like, okay, this is good, it's a good film. They haven't, when they were developing, they hadn't thought about who they could cast to make it as commercial as possible. They haven't thought about whether or not the product is commercial as possible. They haven't thought about necessarily the technicalities in terms of quality control, and that is it's actually a viable product. And they go around and maybe they try and get in some festivals, and that costs them a lot of money and doesn't go anywhere. So then they go, okay, then we better have some meetings. They don't go anywhere. And then they think, well, maybe we should get a sales agent. And they get the worst sales agent in the world ever, who gives them a predatory contract. They just take the rights. They're never even going to try. And then what happens is they look at streaming as their only option. They think, well, it can't be that bad, can it? And they realize how much they're going to make on this movie. And they realize how much their investors have spent in total. That's when it can get really messy. And, who I'm involved with, we don't go in without a plan to get out. We ain't spending anyone's money without the intention that they're going to get some checks back to them as fast as possible and in compensation. So yeah, if you're in the acquisitions department, it's an interesting time. A lot of films are going nowhere, so they're looking for content, but there's also a lot of content out there.
Right. So, okay. Yeah, because this is the thing. Well, like, forget Disney Plus because I subscribe to it, but it's like a case of everything's been put on hold. Their whole content is so it's all back library stuff. But when I look at Amazon and when I look at Netflix, and I don't know how Netflix keeps pulling this genie out of that, like out of the bowl, because it's been like it feels like every week, without fail, they have brought something new out of the bag. Like there's a TV show I like to watch, which Good Girls. It's about like this crew. I don't know if you've watched it.
I'm aware of it because I've got a project very similar.
Ah, okay, yeah. So crew of mothers, two sisters, and like their best friend. Like they stumble onto this counterfeiting racket which is going on, and they sort of see how they sort of slowly become more and more emerge. It's like Breaking Bad, but with counterfeit cash. That's the easiest way of I can explain it. But they brought that out, and now this week I believe they've got Umbrella Academy coming out, and like week before that, maybe 2 weeks before, they had Old Guard, and then other things which I haven't been interested in coming out, but they've been bang, 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 bang. And other places have not been so much with like up to the task. So I was like thinking, yeah, there are still other places hungry for it. But when you say, okay, you kind of look at streaming from like your point of view on the business side, you like go, oh my God, you want to just give us that much? Or every time it's shown, is it sort of like pennies a showing, or how does that work? Do you know, or is it
Well,
a mystery?
there's a few models with streaming, and there's people coming up with new interpretations of it all the time. And there are models out there where people take a royalty payment per screening. Amazon introduced that interesting system where they had a pot. I think it was something like $1 million, and then that was distributed on a percentage basis originally to the different people. So if only 10 people put a movie on their system, and one of those 10 got 80% of the viewings, they would get 80% of that fund. That's one way of doing it, which is like a participation model. But most sales or licensing deals are involved on some kind of upfront fee, upfront payment, or a sequence of payments. And you have to be careful with that because there are streaming services out there, big ones, and you could be waiting 2 years before you actually receive anything. And the other issue with streaming is if you sell to a global streamer, you've just lost all opportunity to sell individual regional deals because your streamer's in every region already. So you've potentially lost out from that as well. I'm not saying that streaming's any worse than anything else or any better, but people can have an overly romanticized concept. I know of people, they have made $1 million budget movies with majorly known talent in them, paid a lot for that talent, and they've taken $700,000 deals on streaming off the back of it. So I mean, their investors eaten $300,000 with nothing in down the road really at all.
Yeah, like I'm basically talking from a place of ignorance when it comes to this type of thing. But like when you're like talking 2 years down the line, how on earth is anyone meant to be able to still continue to make content if you got to wait on like from a check for 2 years? Look, people like grumble about 90 days if you have to pay an invoice, but 2 years? Come on. Wow.
Yeah, distribution deals can often span quite a large amount of time. I mean, we had a major studio looking at our project. They wanted, rights for 25 years or something like that. So some of these deals are incredibly long term.
Yeah.
But the thing is, so if you take, for example, well, let's say I'm an investor and I want to put $10 million into something, anything, right? I'm looking at the stock market. I'm going to, if I'm investing and not trading, I'm looking at what, 5% a year if I'm lucky.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm going to be in it for 10, 25 years, something like that. If I look at building and construction, I think what's the return on that? 7.5%, maybe 10% if you're good. You're looking at 10-year turnarounds on a lot of that, from initial investment to planning permission to construction to actually fulfilling on that. So on the kind of scale in the investment, the kind of scale investment people are making, film can actually be quite good, even if these time periods are 2, 3, 5 years, even if you're not necessarily getting your first payment for that, for 2 years, because maybe that payment is 1.5 times your initial investment, or, maybe you're making 50% back, maybe you're going to make three times what you're invested back in a few years. So the rate of return, you have to compare it to kind of major investments, and in that case film can be quite dynamic. And generally speaking, a good investor needs to be investing in a slate. So whilst that film's being made and he's going out getting its distributed, you're on to the next project within that slate.
Mm-hmm.
So if the investor's got 10 million, maybe you would make, I mean, at the moment, you would almost certainly try to make 10 $1 million movies, because that's going to be a sustainable model. So you would then give yourself 10 years.
Okay. Right. Blimey. Very challenging, to say the least.
Yeah.
My God. So, okay. So, the distribution side, that it does trip me out listening to that, because the way I think everyone sees it is like, you make the movie, like you put it out there, and like, don't get me wrong, I would say the majority of people just like, you make the movie, you put it out there, and the distribution side kind of disappears into the ether because they have no idea about it. But then it's like, you make X amount of money, like if it's in the theater takes their cut, and then basically you get that money back, like whatever the percentage that might be. I imagine when you're talking about studios which get involved, they're taking their cut. So by the time it comes back to yourselves, it's like you're getting what's remaining after the movie, well, after the theaters take their cut if it's been released in the cinema, and then what comes out of the marketing department and everything like this, and then basically the movie company taking their cut. So it doesn't seem like you get a lot back. Like if you made like 100 million, you might be seeing like 20 million out of that 100, or 30, or is it better than that? Or am I?
It can vary a lot. It can vary a tremendous amount. Some people self-distribute. Some people, they have a strategy where they try to retain as much profit for themselves as possible. But yes, I mean, so it's called a waterfall, and there are all these different stages that, as you say, things go down. And the thing is, a lot of those stages are tiered and time dependent. If you look at a theatrical release, for example, so I don't think a lot of people realize this, but if you go and watch a major blockbuster movie at the opening weekend, that movie theater probably isn't making a penny off your ticket. They're probably making zero cash whatsoever. They're making the money off the food at that point. And then as time goes on, the theatre takes more and more, and the distributor takes less and less. So that can change dynamically down the line. All your different deals that you've pieced together globally, they can all be different as well in terms of how, when, and how much of the money you get coming back to you. And then you've got other issues, like, for instance, if you've used a sales agent, then the sales agent's going to have a charge on that, as an agent typically does. The sales agent might have costs attributed to marketing and selling the film that have now been tacked on. If you sell to a major studio, that major studio, let's say they have to go and do voiceovers for different regions. Maybe there's various other marketing things that might get tacked on to the overall cost. So you might not actually break even until further on down the line. It's one of the reasons why you try to keep your budget as low as possible, because people don't realize how much this all adds up. So yeah, then you've got the waterfall within the production itself. So you might have what's called, offsetting, so to speak, where you owe people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's generally frowned upon for producers to do this, but what they will do is, maybe the writer, maybe someone like me, maybe I take a pay cut because I'm going to get something when the film sells. So
Hmm.
then those people will get what they're owed first, and then the investor gets what they've paid plus a certain percentage of profit, and then the income gets spread between the lead producer and the investors. The lead producer's share is then shared between people that he's given points to in terms of participation. So yeah, there's all these tiers, there's a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of numbers. Everyone needs to be able to audit those numbers, ideally, so people can sometimes fall down with that. They don't know how much a movie's made, and they can't find out because it's not in their contract. And then you've also got the situation, well, let's say your movie's doing really well, but the studio or the distributor or whomever isn't doing as well off that movie as they would from another movie that they have the rights to.
Yeah.
Well, guess what they're going to do?
Mm.
They're gonna stop screening your movie. They're going to go, okay, then we'll let that run out and we'll let the other one run in because we're going to make more movie off that one. So you can actually end up in a situation where their interests are against yours. So I don't want to project anything because it's a very friendly, decent industry, and it's good and it's wholesome. But yeah, people make business decisions, and you can get really strongly affected by that. The moral of the story is make your movie for as little as you can possibly get away with making it for. More doesn't necessarily mean better.
Well, yes, I've watched the King Arthur movie. I'll say all I can say about that. But like, this is the thing. Like, that sounds like an awful lot of plates to have spinning, and like just like to keep track of that all. And like you go, yes, I'm an assistant producer. No, but that still is a lot of work, and that's like, okay, wow. But what then possessed you to come up with? Is it script revolutions?
Yeah, Script Revolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So I spoke.
did
Yeah.
you?
So I spoke earlier about that supply and demand issue.
Yeah.
Screenwriting is no barrier to entry. Now it's easier than ever. You can pick up a Chromebook and you can start writing a screenplay, and you can email. If you've got a Hollywood producer's email address, you're perfectly able to email them that to them. They're probably going to say, for crying out loud, please don't do that. But you can, and that barrier to entry just isn't there. So a lot of people are getting into screenwriting and have been getting into screenwriting worldwide for some time now. Emails really changed things, and digital technologies really changed things. So what we have is we have this massive supply and demand issue. Everyone's targeting Hollywood. Hollywood, we've only got a few studios now, and there's only really a handful of actual sizable indie studios that go out and make the majority of content. So everyone's targeting them.
Mm.
There's a lot of people trying to get a screenplay sold. There's not a lot of people in Hollywood in particular who want to buy them. And as a result of that, what's happened is we've seen a lot of gatekeeping build up in the last 10 years or so. Some quite predatory businesses going out there and charging people to try and get exposure. And I watched that happen over a few years, and it was getting to the point where it felt like if you just wanted to get your script listed somewhere online where people could find it, it's going to cost you a lot of money per month. Money that me, as a guy living in the Western world, found harsh. And I'm thinking, if I am in other areas of the world where the dollar is incredibly strong
Mm.
and $50 a month is like the equivalent of $500 a month, How are those people ever going to break in? How is their industry ever going to build up if everyone's obsessed with Hollywood? How are they going to find motivation and hope and everything else? And this thing was bugging me for a couple of years. I was just like, please, someone just build it. It's possible. I come from a web development backgrounds. Please, I don't want to be the guy that builds it. It was July the 4th, 2016.
Yeah.
And you'll totally relate to this because this really fits in with your personality type and how you are about how you do things. And it was July the 4th, and I was like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. And then I just had this name, Script Revolution, and I'm like, I'm all in. I've got to make this happen. I've got to make it happen as fast as possible. And I ended up building this site, and it was launched by August 1st. It's our 4th birthday on Saturday. Today's the 28th. We're doing this on the 28th. And yeah, it was out by August 1st. I just went for it, super intense. And
Yeah.
I've just launched this website where anyone can list their screenplay for free and anyone can join up and read those screenplays. So, if you're in if you're in any of the BRICS countries, if you're in Brazil, if you're in South Africa, if you're in, areas of Russia or areas like that, you can still be a part of this if you're a filmmaker. You don't have to get into a certain clique. If you're a script writer, you can put as much of your material on there as you want at zero cost. And, it's out there. Hopefully you're going to get some exposure. People are going to like it, upvote it, and everything else. So, I've created what I call it a scriptocracy. It's the basis of good scripts get attention. It's as simple as that. You don't need to pay people to read them. You don't need to pay people to evaluate them. You don't need to pay someone to host it. It's a good script. It will get noticed. So, yeah, I've been running that for 4 years, and we're just off 7,000 members now.
Wow. But that is marvelous growth right there. But wow, it's being able to be that bridge to help connect people to other people where they can get their stories out there and hopefully made either in a short film or a feature film. That is fantastic work there. But to go, the 4th of July, okay, and then by the 1st, that's like, how many hours a day were you working on that to get?
It was crazy. It was crazy. I mean, it was every hour, and it was that situation where I went in not sure if I could do it. I was just, you know what, maybe I can't make this. Maybe it's beyond me, because I didn't have tremendous programming skills or anything like that. I didn't know how to get it made. I had a rough idea, and I knew it was most likely possible, but I didn't really know fully how to get there. So it was an intense 4 weeks of just learning on the fly and trying things and having these kind of eureka moments. But I'd done 4 years of trying to break in writing at that point. Freelancing was slow, because I was trying to do a bit of freelancing on the side. I really needed to throw myself into something that wasn't writing 100%. So it was a nice break in that respect. But yeah, it takes up a lot of my time now. And with it being an international thing, it's not unusual for me to climb into bed at midnight and then have to jump straight back out again because an email's come through about something or there's an issue that needs clearing up. So it's always there. But we have a Rockstar system on there now where members can get Rockstar status, because what happened was people wanted to send me money. It was free and I didn't want money, and then people was just like, well, I want to send you money. And then I was like, well, if you want to send me money, I mean, if you want to support it, that's good. We don't want this to fail. It's a movement. And then people pointed out Patreon, and I looked at Patreon and I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. But when I looked at the videos about it, I was like, okay, people want to be part of something and support something. I'm like, yeah, I can enable that. Okay, I can help them with that. So we started a Patreon account and people started joining like that. And that's where the Rockstar thing started. And they pay $5 a month. And now there's a choice between $5 a month or $50 a year, and they get like stats and they get featured a little bit more, and they just get the status more than anything, and are able to say, I'm part of this revolution. And I'm not going to lie, it saved the site doing that. It got close. my life got close to the point where I would have had to have shut it down.
Like, this is the thing I find with regards to when Patreon first came around. It was one of those things. Was like, I, I would say I may have scoffed at it. So like, Patreon, what's this about? But when you think about when like you've got creative types out there, like it's quite a struggle to like if to get sort of noticed on say a YouTube or anything like this, or basically to launch something which people would pay for on a like day-to-day basis. And when you're talking, if someone's like paying £5 a month, like the price of maybe a coffee and a half from Starbucks, to put towards something which is positive, good, and basically helps people more or helps that particular artist. I don't see anything wrong with that. Like where people used to spend out, yeah, 20, £30 on like a bunch of magazine subscriptions, if it's helping support a person do what they love to do and it brings joy to that person, yeah. I had to admit to myself I was wrong about the whole Patreon thing and go, right, it's what it's just helping people do what they want to do and helping them bring a little bit more, hopefully, fingers crossed, a little bit more positive energy into the world. But yeah, but like this is the thing, something about yourself and your character. When like earlier in the conversation, you mentioned, yeah, like traveling here, traveling there, and doing freelancing and everything like this. I don't like. I think this was always in your cards. You thought of it. No one else was doing it, and I've got to say, uh, you might be a little bit of. You might have a little bit of a renegade heart, my friend,
Yeah,
to say the least. So this is why I'm not surprised that you went, yeah, I did it.
that's so true. And I think that it is just in a lot of us to be that person that stands up and does something.
Mm,
And when you care about it so much, I think for me, it was the effect that trying to break in had on my psyche. It was the pain that I went through
mm,
trying to do something. It was also that feeling of I'm never, what am I going to do that makes an actual difference in this world? Maybe I'll never get a film made. This was like 2016. Nothing was really happening or felt like it was really happening. And I'm just thinking about all those writers out there who were in a form of pain, who felt like there was just nothing out there that was giving them anything back. And I really struggled with the Patreon thing, just like you mentioned there, that kind of scoffing of what people just give you money.
yeah.
They just give you money to just do what you like doing or want to do. I had to email Patreon and say, can I even put this on your system? I'm not a YouTuber. I'm not a painter or anything like that. This is a website which hosts scripts. And they were like, yeah, that's absolutely fine. Get it on there. I would be pleased to have it. But the funny thing was at the time, I was already a Patreon supporter of a YouTube channel called Fully Charged, which is a channel all about electric cars, run by Robert Llewellyn. He played a character called Crichton on Red Dwarf.
Yeah,
Yeah, great
yeah,
guy.
yeah.
And it's a brilliant show. Fully Charged is a great show. And I was already Patreon supporting Fully Charged, not because I wanted early access to their YouTube videos, but because I believed in what they were doing. So it was this really kind of bizarre case of kind of double think in my head where I was happy to contribute to something, whereas when it was thinking of contributing to what I want to do, I was immediately like, ooh, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable
Mm.
with that. And then, I just couldn't just take Patreon donations from people. I had to give them more back. So we started to have webinars and things like that. And, to be honest, most people that sign up to Rockstar status get something back, which immediately compensates way beyond what they've put in. We were able to give a lot back to them as well. So it's working out really nicely.
Excellent. And when you say you do webinars, is it like once a month or is it more than that? Is it like a couple of times?
So through COVID, we've been doing every 2 or 3 weeks. And what will happen is we'll have a webinar and it'll be myself and it'll be my lead producer from Break Even, Shane Stanley. Now, Shane Stanley, he's done everything in Hollywood. This guy, he executive produced The Gridiron Gang, which was a box office #1. globally, and help The Rock, become as known as Dwayne Johnson,
Yeah.
and become well known off the back of it, and share a wonderful story. His father and his father's charity group was the original thing behind Gridiron, the project that started Gridiron Gang and the TV documentary. And Shane's won Emmys in his teens. He ran Charlie Sheen's production company in his 20s. He's been in all the big studios. He knows everyone. He's done everything. So who better to bring in to a bunch of young screenwriters or aspiring screenwriters and filmmakers and give them advice, real advice, genuine advice, because there's a lot of people out there want to give bad advice, probably in exchange for money, because they think they know something and they don't. So we've been doing these sessions, and they've been on as long as 6.5 hours in some cases. But the rock stars come in and they learn a tremendous amount. And a lot of it is very bespoke to their needs as well. So they'll talk about what they're doing, and Shane will get quite invested and involved in that. So they'll get specific ideas on how to move forward.
Fantastic, fantastic. So for the future, what would be what would it be your ideal thing? Would it be the movie side of things? Would it be basically, would it be the script revolution? What would be the sort of thing you would like to take on to the next stage, the next level?
Well, I mean, my passion, absolute passion, is making movies. That's quite interesting. If you could ask me that a couple of years ago, I would have said writing movies. I would not have dared say making movies. But I have a tremendous passion for getting movies made. There's a businessman deep down within me, and I love the business of film and making films on profit, and films that reach an audience. And you can't make a bad film that does well, really, unless you're a massive studio. You can push it through marketing. You've got to make good films, and good films will do well if they're made with a business minded attitude. So that has all my attention. I really want to be in a situation where I'm writing and co-producing a few movies a year, and we're getting these things out there, and we're kind of starting a kind of a new movement within the film world with the kind of films I want to make. I'm quite a pulpy writer. I like female-led stuff. I want to make that happen. Script Revolution, I feel fulfilled by doing it, but it's tough. It's really tough, and it's ongoing all the time. It's a lot of technical stuff. I would love to build that up, and I'd love to bring people in to help with that at some point, to help automate it to some extent. I don't know where Script Revolution needs to go exactly, but I'm definitely in it for the long term. I'm sure about that.
Excellent, excellent. If there was one movie director you could work with, who would it be?
Jim Cameron, I think.
Ooh.
I think that would be the guy. If you read about his history,
Yeah.
He was a truck driver who was going to the library after, between shifts and photocopying the sections of books to learn. Every movie he's made has been hard to get funded. Every movie he's made has been hard to complete, and every movie he's made, he's kind of got a bit screwed on the deal. And he just keeps going. It's worth watching as a documentary. You might be able to catch it on YouTube, although I'm not too sure about the legality of that, but it is on YouTube if anyone wants to find it. There's Superior Firepower, which is all about making Aliens, the feature film, and they made that in London. And if you look at Making the Abyss and things like that, that guy is on another level. Like, his ability to just soldier through, and I'd love to see that. It would be a tough experience, but I'd love to see that. I'm a big Tarantino fan also, but I'd be more interested in chatting with someone like that about his writing process than actually necessarily working with him on set.
Like I've got to say, Aliens, yeah, Alien, would scare the bejesus out of me, I've got to say, when I was a kid. And then when I watched Aliens, which I've got to say, if you want to watch a film which basically brings together a whole team and in one film, and that's like, oh, these are all the people, and like you get them immediately. Aliens is second to none. Like, if you want to see it, that type of thing done badly, watch the Justice League movie. It's just like, oh, this is this person. That no, no, no.
I know what you mean. You know, it's quite interesting because a lot of blockbuster movies from the past probably wouldn't hold up well if they were released today. People still like watching them and they're great movies, but I'm not sure that they would feel big enough. Like even a film like Jurassic Park, I'm not sure that would feel big enough being released as a summer blockbuster now in a world of, you know, Marvel films and everything else. You know, you look at Jurassic World, that's more the kind of scale you have to be now. And perhaps why those new movies don't work as well as actual films. But a lot of, you know, those older films like Die Hard would be more like an indie film now than a feature, you know, a blockbuster. And, you know, and I say that with absolute admiration. But Aliens is one of those films that if it was released tomorrow, I think would still feel massive.
Now, put it this way, Alien still holds up today with regards to the look, the feel, all of the like special effects still hold up. If you look at like Star Wars movies, like back in the day, well, not the original Star Wars movies, but the prequels, those don't look like they hold up today. You know, and they have.
I agree.
That's like I was about to say the original Star Wars, but no. Apart from the lightsaber fights, where like if you compare the choreography, it's just totally different. It's like, yeah, it's just like you look at Rogue One and you're like, oh, when Darth Vader comes through at the end, you look, oh yeah, and then if you think the Star Wars movie comes after that and their lightsaber fight, you go, oh no.
That's it, man. I mean, that is so true. And, you know, and Star Wars was effectively the first blockbuster film ever made, really. It set the template for that. But now, you know, and I say this, and some people nod their heads, you know, those in the industry would nod their heads, and those people outside it kind of fall aghast. But you could probably make a Star Wars now for $1 million budget. Like, it would not be, there would be a lot of corners cut, definitely, in your special effects and areas like that. But you could still make a film of that scale. You know, there are people out there, you know, like the Asylum studios like that, and they make mockbusters more than blockbusters, so to speak. But, you know, they kind of prove that you can get most of the way there on a very small budget if you forgo maybe talent, the value of talent and stuff like that. It's really surprising. So yeah, you know, what I love about Jim Cameron, and if you watch him work, is he knows how the models are made. He knows how the special effects works. He's a cinematographer at heart. He's a great writer. I think his writing's just brilliant, really, in terms of making good commercial, entertaining movies. And he just seems to know every single step. I mean, he married his producer as well, so you know, he was like, the producing side was well covered on top of that. Yeah, that's what amazes me. I like people like that who wear a lot of different hats. They really impress me.
Like, I'm sure in the future you will be wearing many a hat yourself. Yeah, no doubt, rocking it. Like, I'll be sitting here going, I remember when I was spoke to CJ, and like, yeah, we talked movies. Yes, yeah, I have no doubt in my mind. Yeah, big things are in store for you, better things, and yeah, I know you're up for the challenge because yeah, like, I'm gonna have to have you back on again because yeah, there's stuff about your early life and stuff I want to like talk to you about, but time is my enemy today.
Well, thanks, that I really appreciate that. I really appreciate the support. You know, it's a tough world. You're all in the film industry. You're always walking on really thin ice. You never quite feel safe, and the kind of plummet through is going to be pretty horrific. So, you know, any support is always really appreciated.
I am happy to give it, and by all means, if I can help in any way, like just give me a call, and I'll be happy to do that. CJ, could you tell the lovely people out there how they can reach you as well?
Yeah, so I've got a website, it's cjwalley.com, CJWALLEY.com. You can catch me on Twitter, CJ_Walley. I'm on there. And obviously Script Revolution, scriptrevolution.com as well, where you can, if you are a writer or you feel like trying writing or anything like that, or you're a filmmaker, jump on the website and check it out. It's free and open to everybody.
Perfect, perfect. All of that will be in the description down below, or in the episode notes. So please get in contact with CJ. He's a wonderful guy, I've got to say it. And yes, I look forward to getting him back on in the future. Yes, many plans going on.
Fellow life warrior.
Oh, damn right. Loving it. He's embracing the life warrior lifestyle. I'm liking it. I'd like to say thank you to you, CJ. It's been a pleasure and an honor. And yes, I'd like to say thank you to one and all out there. Please stay well, stay safe, be awesome, be excellent, be fantastic, be all the positive bees you can be in this world, and then some. Have a great day, guys. Peace. And we are